thank you for coming on. I'm really big into wellness and agency, but I'm also big on educating people about different practitioners and different modalities that can
Hmm.
give one agency over their health and their wellness. And I'm big on building a wellness team and how you may be in rooms that I might not be in.
Hmm.
But if you're a practitioner of mine that's on my wellness team, you can tell me something that can help me. So I just would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure, absolutely. I'm Leonard Shen. I like to say that I'm a doctor, a lawyer, and a priest. So it's like a joke walking into the room when I come into the room. And so I'm actually a doctor of Chinese energetic medicine, which is medical Qigong. And in addition, I'm a Harvard-trained lawyer. That was my original career. I spent 20 years as an environmental lawyer in the government and private practice in the private sector. And then I became the chief compliance and ethics officer for Visa, American Express, PayPal, and GE Commercial Finance. So I spent basically 30 or 40 years in sort of the classic corporate environments, became chairman of the board of a couple of companies, have sort of the classic resume of someone in that sector. But then, in terms of being a doctor and a priest, I also began about 1984, so 40 years ago. I began taking Tai Chi. I just graduated from law school. I went to Seattle, and my Tai Chi master, who's still around, John Leong in Seattle, did a demonstration on the streets of Seattle during Chinese New Year's. And so what he did was that he went out there and had six men standing in front of him. And each of these men had a steel reinforcing rod, like used in concrete construction, maybe about 6 feet long or 8 feet long. So they each took this steel reinforcing rod and they put it up against the soft part of his throat, right here, the throat chakra, as we now
Right.
know it. Right? So he's got six bands of steel that are pressed up against his throat, each of these men sort of holding it gently against him and bracing themselves. And he does some Qigong exercises, which I'd never heard of before. And so he does just like 2 or 3 minutes, nothing really fancy, just sort of sits there. And then he gives a signal, and the seventh man, who's like this famous movie star, stands behind him and pushes him down into the rods. And instead of killing him, all the rods go through his neck, all the six rods bent like spaghetti noodles. It was like crazy. And I was like 10 feet away. I went up right afterwards. I grabbed a rod. I felt it was a real steel reinforcing rod. It wasn't, rubber or something. So I knew at that moment that this was something that I, really had to understand better. It was clearly beyond what Western science could
Right.
explain or understand. And so that continued my journey then, parallel of having this sort of corporate career and so forth. I began to, or continued to train, whether Tai Chi, meditation, yoga, Reiki, Qigong, and then sort of got more and more into it. So that's sort of in a nutshell where I first developed this interest.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah,
That is
it's
a
crazy. And lots of
yeah.
stories, crazy things
Wow.
I can share.
So so once you saw that, that's where you said, okay, I'm gonna walk, I'm gonna figure out the path. Like how did, wow.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so I think there was a turning point about 12 years ago or so where I first um, really had a good, solid introduction to Qigong. So Qigong means energy work, as you probably know. It is essentially comes down to the idea that your mind is incredibly powerful and you can control electromagnetic energy. And everything's energy, so your mind can actually control matter and everything else. And Qigong has a 3,000-year-old history in China. It has analogs around the world in different other shamanistic and indigenous tribe traditions for healing. It has martial arts, and it has spiritual, mystical applications. So about 10, 12 years ago or so, I started really getting into Qigong, and then I was very fortunate to be introduced to really a grandmaster named Jerry Allen Johnson. He is really seen as the person who brought Qigong to the West about 30 years ago or so from China. He was a kung fu master at the time in the United States. He developed all sorts of these internal arts, working in Qi in the way I mentioned, in the U.S., and so was qualified when he went out in the mid 90s to Chinese hospitals that exclusively practice Qigong for medical purposes. And that's where he got incredible training, secret techniques that are frankly otherwise not available, brought it back to the US, and I was fortunate enough to begin training with him. So in the course of that time, I've now become an ordained Christian mystical priest. I used to never believe in religion at all. I was like, crazy, opium of the masses is like, this is such woo-woo stuff. But I then began to experience some crazy things. And so I became an ordained priest. I became a doctor of Chinese energetic medicine. I began to learn how to treat people with what not too long ago, I would scoffingly call faith healing.
Mm.
But then I see the results, and I began to also see results in myself, where there was a couple of really significant issues, the most recent of which was just in the past month, where medical Qigong was able to turn around my health situation. So, and now I'm going to become a Buddhist Lama in the next 3 weeks or so. I'll be finishing up a multi-year program, and I'll be becoming a Buddhist Lama.
That's amazing. Man, I want to like talk to you offline, just
Yeah.
to hear your story. Like I'm getting chills. And so, when I think about everything you just said, right? And somebody is looking for answers, what would
Hmm.
be what would be your primary modality? Would it be that? Would it be everything that you've trained under, because a lot of times, even for myself, I'll go into my toolbox. I go into this box and I'm like, okay, this might be something for you. I'm not a one size fits all. But like what are some of the like modalities that you use if a client or a customer or a patient, I don't know what term you call them, individual
Right.
comes in. What is something, what would be the primary modalities?
Absolutely. So I have done Reiki, but Reiki, no offense, is
It's
a less sophisticated version compared to the 3,000-year-old,
right.
Qigong tradition, 100 years old or so. And so basically, I would go to Qigong, not necessarily for everything. So Qigong has its own limitations, but essentially what happens is whether a client or a patient will come to me and they'll say, I have the following emotional, psychological, or physical problems, diseases or psychic problems, psychological problems. And so we'll perform an intake, very sort of standard process, just work through their history, and it's both their medical history as well as their maybe psychological childhood situation. Often people have traumas, and we all have traumas. I mean, this is just growing up in life, right? And so I try to get as much as possible understanding from them about what they identify as being potentially helpful and harmful situations in their life, and how that's manifested itself physically, emotionally. And then we do actually a pretty unique business model, so to speak. So my website is californiaqigong.com. And I formed that from a consortium with four other of the best healers in the country. And I know a lot of healers in many different disciplines. The four of us, four or five of us all total, we have a model where we offer a combination of teaching. So we have, to your point about empowerment and sort of, how do you allow someone to take control of their lives? So Qigong is all about self-practice. There's a lot of work. You have to really do some very difficult work in probing into, what is it about my personality, about my woundings in the past that I need to really go back and sometimes take accountability for a situation that may have left some scars with me. Where was I responsible? Take ownership. Forgive other people, forgive yourself, forgive the universe for things that happened. There's a lot of this sort of soul retrieval work, as we call it, to try to address the energy patterns, the psychological patterns, behavioral patterns that we have. Then, in addition to those sort of more mindset changing, difficult self therapy processes, we teach people specific Qigong exercises. So medical Qigong is very sophisticated. It treats hundreds of different physical diseases and psychological problems with specific protocols developed over the centuries. So we will teach our patients particular exercises to be done for their particular situation. And then in addition, we will do energy treatments. And so there are some people in our little consortium who are, again, the best healers in the world. I personally am getting healings from these people because they're unbelievably powerful. Remote healings as well as direct in-person healings. And I was always about the client. What will help the client?
Right.
energy treatments, self-prescription exercise they can do at home, and mindset changes. That's sort of the suite of things that we bring to bear using our Qigong practices.
That is amazing. I love that. No, energy is important. And I don't think people realize, you know, your body can heal. There's some, it's just like a dial. You just have to change it a little bit. And once people can get in that mindset, it's infinite, right? The healing, it's just infinite. And once you can get somebody to understand that, and a lot of times for me, it's like getting them out of their way. And once they can get out of their way, then they can experience what their heart truly desires. They might not be able
Uh,
to communicate what their heart desires, but you can see it because if they're coming there, there's something that they're seeking. Um,
Absolutely. In fact, I just to tell you the quick story here. So, um, for myself, uh, about in early December, so just 2 months ago, Um, I was uh, I was just doing my normal medical checkup, and my blood test results came up. Blood and urine tests came back, and they showed that I had really high clinical albuminuria, which is albuminuria means that you have too much protein that is leaking through your kidney filters. So the nephrologist, I went to a specialist here in Silicon Valley, um, identified based on the laboratory results that I likely had what she called irreversible kidney damage, that there were large holes in my kidney filter. I believe that those holes came from my actually doing a very advanced form of Tai Chi, where you are working energy in a way that's, if you do it, not appropriate, you can actually burn out your kidneys. So, and then we took a second test like a week, 10 days later, just to confirm that this was not, an anomaly. And if anything, the results were even worse. So I immediately then went to the books, to my grandmaster's books. He's written like 5,000 pages published on Amazon. You can find these volumes, treatises on medical Qigong. And I found the specific protocol for kidney nephritis, chronic nephritis in the kidneys. And I also asked two of my colleagues in my California Qigong consortium to energy treatments for me, and I also began certain exercises myself. It wasn't that intensive, so they did. Of course, the next month I was actually traveling in Australia, so it was totally remote treatments, and they did two treatments each from the United States while I was in Australia. I also did a few exercises myself in early January, so that's exactly a month ago or so. I came back, I had another test of the same nature done, and it showed an incredible drop down. So if you look at my chart, you'll see it going whoomp way up and then whoomp way back down in the course of like 6 weeks, right? And I just saw my nephrologist last week, and she didn't, I don't know how this happened. How the hell did this happen? She couldn't explain it. It was like, because this was irreversible kidney damage. The
right,
kidney doesn't grow back to restore the filter
right,
much less than a month. But what happened was, because essentially under Qigong, the toxic energy that is accumulated in the kidneys was removed by combination of the exercises and the treatments. And then I was supercharged with life force energy, which is what she is, which allowed the regeneration of the kidney cells. And I'm just saying, just reporting, these are the results from the lab test. And that just happened. That's just the most recent thing. I can tell lots of other stories of people who have healed. And it doesn't even take a lot necessarily. I mean, it
right,
can, it takes a lot of work potentially, but it's just crazy. And actually, what's so exciting to me is that it's actually now being recognized in the United States by the Western medical establishment.
oh,
So, yeah, so seriously, so a year and a half ago in September of 2023, there was a big conference at Harvard Medical School, sponsored by Harvard. And the conference was focused exclusively on Tai Chi, Qigong, and medical effects. So a
wow,
variety of studies were presented there. So, for example, the NIH was there, National Institute of Health,
right,
uh, US VA, Veterans Administration, a couple of my teachers, Kaiser, the big medical
right,
found California and elsewhere. So a variety of sort of big wigs were there from the medical establishment. And among other things at that conference, the VA representative presented a study. So they've been allowing people like myself to teach veterans for the past 5 years, teach Qigong. And they therefore did studies to see what was happening. And what they found was that there was only one modality of all the modalities available to the VA, which is everything,
right,
to treat their. there was only one modality that made a statistically significant difference in the suicide rates of veterans, and that was Tai Chi and Qigong. So what they announced at the conference was that they were establishing a doctoral certification track for doctors, to people to be certified as Qigong doctors. And they're only about maybe 1,000, less than 1,000 in the United States right now. I'm one of them, as my consortium is as well. So they would certify Qigong doctors to treat VA patients around the country. And I can attest that I've been teaching some VA patients, very, very, really unfortunate cases. Um, they were in Desert Storm. They got terrible, terrible traumas exposed to them, horrible physical ailments, and we've been able to remediate them, fix them, have them restored to a normal life in ways that are just amazing, but are demonstrable.
Right.
So I'm very excited that the VA is now embracing this, and NIH, others. This is definitely the coming field, and working hard to basically establish the literature even more thoroughly, so people will understand this actually can make a difference, as it has in China for thousands of years.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you. The interview's not over, but I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Um, and just healing. It sounds like you're in front of so many different spaces to get the word out
Hmm.
about this work. And so I want to thank you for continuing
Sure.
to do this work, and sharing and educating, um, and not keeping it to yourself. Because it sounds like you're
Oh
growing.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
and
expanding.
it's nonprofit too, by the way. 100% of my fees go to a nonprofit, a homeless shelter in Denver, where I teach Qigong, because you can see how even just $100 can make a massive
Right.
difference for home life. So that's my mission. Our mission in California Qigong, we have insanely, I mean, really cheap, like $30 a month for 4 weekly classes from some of the best practitioners in the country. And so we're making this available to homeless people. I teach veterans. I teach at memory care ward in Palo Alto, where some people, 90-year-olds, 93-year-olds who have dementia, this stuff can really help a lot of different populations. And it is absolutely because life has been good to us, already. Our mission is to make this available to people who otherwise couldn't afford it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It's amazing. I would love to talk after this, just
Sure.
to learn more, and see how I can help and how, what
Thank
that looks like. Yeah. And so, it kind of goes into other questions, but just seeing where wellness is headed, right? Like you just talked about, being in Harvard and a conference, and where do you see wellness? Just kind of where the world is right now, right?
you.
But
All right. Yeah,
where do you see?
it's
Um,
terrible.
yeah, and I know that there's so many things going on if we want to believe in like the fifth dimension. Things are happening, and I think
Right.
people are not into that space and don't understand. I think sometimes it's shifting and it's shaking a lot of people up from a energetic space and just not knowing even how to navigate that and control that, just to understand it. And so you being in the
Absolutely.
space that you're in and just what you're seeing in the world and your patients and just navigating, where do you see wellness, like where do you see it going for the clients, people
Sure.
that you work with, and just everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. I see it as there's sort of a two-pronged wave that's happening now. One is at the grassroots level, one is at the senior medical establishment level, as I sort of alluded to, which is to finally begin recognizing and embracing the fact that Western medicine has real value, but also limitations.
Right.
And so as we bring together the world knowledge, let's call it the East, but it's not just the East, in Latin America, Brazil, all over the world, there are many of these same practices. Um, so we bring together all of that information in a way that can really help people in this time of even greater need. That's sort of one way of looking at it, the two-pronged approach. As a grassroots level, yes, indeed, our practice has been just exploding in terms of people coming to us, finding us in interest in who knows ways, because we don't do a marketing at all. I mean, it's very much a sort of, let people come to us, let it grow organically. So that's happening at the grassroots level. It's happening, as I alluded to, at the sort of national level too. But then what it comes down to from an individual point of view is to just have a trust in yourself. So the fundamental belief of many traditions around the world for centuries has been, we're sort of born pure. Most of us were born as pure babies. We're like, really
Mhm.
happy and bright and full of light and energy and so forth. And then life happens, and like,
Yes.
your father shouts at you, stop that, right? Or,
Right.
but all happen, grow up in school, etc., right? And so we start to put on shields and masks, and we are no longer our true natural self. Defense mechanisms, inauthentic, and then that's just the way we interact going forward. And even the most harmful, toxic person was once, a 3-month-old baby who was pure and good. So what I encourage people to do and try to do myself is say, come back to your true core self. We are all good people, good souls. You don't have to be religious. Just know you are a good core person
Right.
and work to shed some of the trauma and the negativity that has been coming into your physical body or energy field over your lifetime. Trust your core instincts. You know right from wrong, you know good from bad, you know what to do, and go back to that core and try to just, release. Often it's anger, frustration, rage, grief. We've all had these emotions and situations. Qigong was all about purging those things out, using various techniques and so forth, and coming back to your original self. If you do that, you'll feel so much better in so many different ways, and the health will often, not always, follow the results. Again, there are things we cannot do, but there are many things we can do by working this fashion.
Well, you beat me to it because I was going to ask you if somebody was looking to get into that, if somebody was interested, right? What would be something that you would tell them, just at their first time, how do they talk to the practitioner? How do they talk, just
Yeah,
helping them get over that, because a lot of times I'll have clients call me, new people who are seeking counseling or healing, and they're like, hey, I don't know what to ask. And so sometimes I'll even do two consultations with them because if you've picked up the phone or you've emailed me and asked for help, I'm going to help you navigate that space so you can feel comfortable because there's something that's telling you, hey, maybe you should seek some type of guidance, right?
right,
And so
right.
I guess my question for you is kind of what would be something tips to help somebody who's navigating a space who's looking they're interested of coming to your organization, right, to receive help, what would be something
Yes,
that can help them guide them through that process?
absolutely. So, number one is to thank them and applaud them, congratulate them for having the gumption,
Mhm.
to sort of take that step, and to reach out for help because often we're told just keep it inside and
Yeah.
just suck it up and so forth. So, number one, congratulations, you've taken more than the first step, the big
Right.
step, right? Number two is not to orchestrate from fear, not to operate from fear. Because we fear of all types, right? Fear of being embarrassed, fear of getting your ripped off, fear of maybe a little bit of that subconscious fear that if I really start talking about these terrible things that have happened in my life or are currently in my life, that it's going to be too much for me to handle, just be overwhelmed by that.
Right.
And to basically know that fear is everyone has fear of multiple levels because of the way we've grown up in this maybe even increasingly toxic world. But know that at least if you go to the right practitioners who you sense are good of heart, go to what your heart is telling you. If the chemistry is there, if you feel that there's a clicking going on, then you follow that and start to put your trust and lower the fear barriers and be honest about what you have been feeling so they can appropriately diagnose what's really going on here and use their expertise. So those are one thing is congratulations, bravo, keep going. Number two, lower the fear barriers and trust your instinct ultimately about the people you're working with and then go with that.
That is amazing. I like that. Yeah. So I know you said you guys don't do much marketing. Well, let's is there anything else? Because you've been sharing some gems and some nuggets like that I am loving. Like I want to see some of these studies and
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there anything else that you would want to share about the amazing work that you're doing and that your team does? Is there anything else?
Sure. What I'll do is, I know that not even necessarily a lot of people in the United States are into religion or spirituality, although more often not, So I was utterly atheistic, by the way. I was raised atheistic, like a total, not even agnostic, because like these people are so stupid who believe in God or universe or whatever else
Right.
is like, right? But then I had like this unbelievable experience, and I'll just share it, and then I'll get to my point here. So I was taking this Christian ordination course, right? And I was really taking it because I wanted to learn the energetic practices and so forth, and get even more effective in my healing. So my grandmaster says, "I like you to do a little exercise. I like you to sit down, and I like you to imagine a star up at a 45-degree angle up in the sky, just an imaginary star, and have it come closer and closer, brighter and brighter, closer and closer, brighter and brighter, coming down towards your head. All right, and then maybe when you have this imaginary star, in like 10 feet away or something, I'd like you to take the image of Jesus Christ, all right, and put the image of Jesus into the star." So this guy who's never opened the Bible, literally never opened the Bible. I go to like cathedrals just to look at the beautiful architecture,
Right.
but not into a church service, like total atheistic. So I have this movie image of Jesus Christ, right? Like the brown hair, long beard,
Right.
and white. And so 2 days after class, I sit down in my own bedroom. I start the meditation, and closer and closer, brighter, brighter, closer, closer, brighter, brighter. And I take Jesus Christ, and I put this image into the star. And I immediately get this blast of white light, like this nuclear blast, like that, utterly overwhelming me. Like I'm like blinded, I'm shaking, I'm like just like a nuclear blast from my imaginary star. It's like what? This is impossible. All I did was take this thing and I put it into there, and then I'm getting blasted by this incredible energy, super high vibration. I'm just like ah. So it goes on for like 2 minutes or so, and finally it goes away. Just surrender, just give into it. There's nothing to
Right.
do, just give in. So next Monday in class, I asked my grandmaster, says, was that chi? Was that life force energy? Been working with chi for a number of years,
Right.
and he gets really, really sober. He gets, no, that was not chi. Maybe once in your lifetime, if you're lucky, maybe twice, you will have an experience like that. What that was it was a higher order of energy that was making itself available to you, right?
Oh.
And I think that was obvious. I was screaming the obvious. It was a higher order of energy. It's like, ridiculous. And I'm like Mr. Straight and Narrow. I'm working I guess I was working at Visa at the time, a chief
Okay.
compliance. I have a team of 150 people around the world, executive in the board meetings and everything else. And I'm getting this crazy experience. So what I discovered was that was really, I think, in a prior life, and I didn't used to believe in prior life,
Mhm.
but in a prior life, I actually was very Christian oriented.
Right.
So as soon as I called upon Jesus Christ in this very intangible, amorphous, not particularly intentional way, it like clicked, like the groove was come back in, right? Woomph, and it just came to me, right? And I now use that energy for healing, right? All those faith healers in Texas that I would sort of, laugh at, I was like, all of a sudden, this is me. And so I say this simply because most of the people that I work with, they will say, well, I definitely am not Catholic and I'm not
Right.
Christian, or I don't believe in, the institutional churches out there, and they've done a lot of bad things, right?
Right.
Name it Christianity or Buddhism or Taoism or
Right.
Muslim or whatever. A lot of bad stuff has happened in this world. But many people will say, even though I'm not of that doctrinal religion, I do feel like maybe there's something broader than us out there. Maybe the universe is all energy. There's some sort of, commonality out there. That's all it takes. So being able to tap into that instinct that most of us have, that there's a universal energy out there. And maybe if you want to add to it, a Christ or Buddha or Allah or whatever
Right.
else, that's more power to you. But that is fundamentally, it's that connection to the universal energy that gives this its power, and why it's so overwhelmingly powerful, because our little diseases and mental illnesses are nothing compared to the energy that we can connect to and immediately become, at one with, not to
Right.
like to woo woo about it.
Yeah.
So that's what I leave people with, as being, be open to the heart of your hearts. There is a universe out there that you can connect to.
Yes. That's so powerful. I I feel like I can talk to you for hours.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing. No. And so I guess my question would be is where can people find you? Where can
sure.
people find more out, more about
Yeah.
you, the organization, your team? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. So it's California Qigong. I got the swag here. So it's
Okay.
California QIGONG.com.
Okay.
California QIGONG.com. That's our website. You'll find more background about the practitioners, these incredible energy healers who can do magical things. We have high integrity. We really care about we got to do the right thing. This is not a profit-making enterprise. This is to really help people and take the benevolence that we've been giving. We've been giving this incredible bounty and making sure that it can go as broadly as possible, especially to people who don't have a lot of money but have a lot of need. So CaliforniaQigong.com, and we'll be right in touch to help you out, whether it's energy treatments or to train you and teach you. And we have students around the world who are part of our program.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate it and thank you. And I would love to have you back because you're full of knowledge and information and stories. And that's what I really like.
Yep.
I'm going to press finish.
Okay.